Hey there, so glad you're here. This is Reddit Stories Podcast. Relax, you're safe here. Here's our first story. Karen accused me of witchcraft, and my family believes her. This happened a couple of weeks ago at my cousin's birthday party, and I'm still trying to process how bizarre it was. I'm 22, female, and my family is complicated. My biological dad is not around, so it's usually me, my mom, and her side of the family when we do gatherings. This one was supposed to be simple. A backyard birthday party at my aunt's house. Pizza, cake, kids running around with water balloons, the usual. Nothing weird. Or at least, that's what I thought. The whole afternoon, I kept noticing my aunt, let's call her Karen because, well, she earned it, watching me with this intense stare. At first, I brushed it off. Some people just space out, right? But she wasn't spacing out. It was the kind of look you give someone when you're waiting for them to mess up. Eventually, while I was grabbing a soda from the cooler, she came over and said under her breath, "I know what you're doing. You've been practicing witchcraft." I literally laughed because I thought she was joking. But nope, she was dead serious. She leaned in closer and whispered, "I can see it all over you. You've been casting spells, haven't you?" Here's the thing. I don't practice witchcraft. Never have. But I'll admit something to you guys that I've been too scared to admit to most. Very weird things have been happening in my life lately. Like coincidences that line up so perfectly, it feels like more than coincidence. Sometimes I wake up now and I lay in bed and everything is like impossibly perfect, like pure unfiltered joy for 20 minutes or so. I've also had these moments where I can't explain it honestly, but it's as if in a split second, my life goes from completely normal to a beautiful, completely orchestrated movie. Better than any movie I've ever seen, complete with a soundtrack that starts playing in my head. Everything looks and feels different. People's faces are so much softer. Animals' faces suddenly look like individual characters, and I know exactly what they're telling me just by looking at them. The sky turns into a painting. It's like I'm seeing a layer of beauty that was always there, but I just somehow couldn't see before. And before anyone asks, no, I'm not on anything. Whatever this is, it's naturally happening to me in glimpses. And sometimes waves of emotion seem to overtake me like never before, but it's always pure love. Like a realization that we're all one consciousness, that separation itself is just an illusion. Things don't bother me like they used to. I don't have any desire to watch the drama on the news, to debate or argue, or to impress anyone anymore. I understand why people find this concerning, but at the same time, part of me wishes that others would believe me and stop dismissing everything I try to share. It's like a book where wonderful, magical things are happening to the protagonist, but nobody believes them. I tried once to tell a friend about this, and she looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Even my mom, when I mentioned it to her, started treating me differently, like I wasn't okay, and now she keeps suggesting that I try therapy. So I stopped talking about it completely. And now here's my aunt, accusing me out loud of being some kind of a witch. I told her, "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not doing anything like that." I figured if I stayed calm, she'd drop it. But instead, she doubled down. She said things like, "Your cat follows you everywhere. That's not normal." And, "How do your plants stay alive when everyone else's die?" She even said, "You're part of the problem with this generation. Our country is being torn apart, and you don't even know what's going on in Washington." At that point, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I tried to explain that I stopped following the news because it did nothing but stress me out, and I knew there was nothing I could do to fix any of it. Then she snapped, "You're bringing dark energy into this family." I felt every eye on me. My cousins were whispering. My uncle was pretending not to hear. And there I was, just standing there with a soda in my hand, being accused of witchcraft like it was the 1600s. Finally, my cousin, bless her, told Karen to knock it off. She said, "You're embarrassing yourself. She's literally just living her life. Why don't you focus on living yours?" Karen stomped off in a huff, muttering about how God showed her a vision and how she'd pray the darkness away. The moment she walked off, I felt this huge wave of relief, but also embarrassment. Like, how did my life turn into this? And what does it even mean that my aunt thinks I'm casting spells? I'm even starting to wonder if she could be right. What if there is something dark that's causing all of these wonderful things to happen in my life? But then again, why would something evil cause all of this beauty for me? My aunt is the one who's afraid and angry, and it's like she's just projecting that fear out onto me. If there is some force causing all of this wonder in my life now, it must love me deeply, and I don't see why I should be afraid of it. But later that night, I kept replaying it all in my head. I'm not a witch. I don't do rituals. I don't cast anything. Nothing like that. But obviously, strange things have been happening to me that I can't explain, and now I feel like I can't even talk about them without being labeled crazy or worse. So here I am, sharing it with strangers on the internet, because honestly, you guys feel safer than my own family. I don't know what's happening in my life right now, but I do know one thing. If the universe really is lining things up for me, I don't think that's something to be ashamed of. Wow, reading this felt like you were putting into words what I've been going through too. I've been having these exact same kinds of moments where everything suddenly feels staged, almost like life itself is glowing, and I can't share it with anyone because the couple of times I tried, people looked at me like I'd lost it. So I just keep it all to myself. I don't know what's causing it either, but I can't explain how wonderful it feels to finally know, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that there's so much more to life than I ever thought there was. Seeing your story makes me feel less alone, and I can't even tell you how grateful I am for that. This was beautiful to read, and I know exactly what you're describing. For me, it started 5 years ago, small moments at first, and gradually they kept coming until it felt like waking up from a long dream, and it turned into my everyday reality. It will only get deeper as time goes on, and more layers are revealed, like finding keys to rooms you didn't know existed. I'm so glad you're waking up from this too, and even more glad you shared it here. That was very brave of you. What the heck did I just read? OP, I'm sorry, but you sound like someone who is completely losing your mind, and your aunt can see it, so she's literally just trying to help you. She's right. It's not normal for people to just stop watching the news. The only way we can change any of what's going on right now is to get involved and stay up to date as much as possible. Stay on X, our only source of reliable information. Learn the truth and share it on TikTok with the masses. The angrier we get, the better, because that's what causes us to make a real change. And all of these loonies I see in the comments encouraging your delusion, they're just as confused as you are. I'd rather die than ever lose my mind and start talking about consciousness and all this other crap you believe in. Maybe get some real help, and they can bring you back down to reality. Because if young people like you keep your heads in the clouds, our entire system as we know it will collapse. Gee, I don't know, Reddit boy. If I had to choose between being in OP's shoes or that last commenter's shoes, I think I'd go with OP. Yeah, that last commenter felt like a ball of chaos just flying at you. Everything inside them just came pouring out through their words. Well, you know what they say, whatever fills your heart overflows through your mouth, whether it's fear, pride, deception, or love. Speech reveals its source. Then I hope our listeners know our source, and that each and every one of you knows how truly special you are. Am I the jerk for telling my husband that I don't want to be a single mom of 3 kids? Before we get to my main post, I need to share 2 of my earlier posts with you. Background post 1. Am I the jerk for calling my mother-in-law a liar? This happened a few months back, but it's the first big crack in the foundation of what was already a tense marriage. My sister, who's 33, and I, 30 female, aren't especially close. We're civil. We show up for birthdays and weddings, but we don't really hang out or call just to talk. Some of that distance is personality differences, but a big part of it is that she's never approved of my marriage. My husband is 12 years older than me. We started dating when I was 19. She made her feelings clear early on. She thought it was weird, she thought it was unbalanced, and she never pretended otherwise. My husband's family feels the same way about her, but for different reasons. They don't like that my sister is outspoken and openly feminist. She doesn't soften her opinions for anyone, especially when it comes to marriage and gender roles, so she's never been popular with my mother-in-law or sister-in-law. A few months ago, we hosted a birthday party for our son. The house was full, kids running around, music, food, the usual chaos. At one point, I had to excuse myself because I had a pounding headache. I went upstairs to lie down for a bit. While I was resting, I overheard raised voices downstairs. My husband and mother-in-law were arguing, which was strange because they're usually on the same side. My husband came into our room looking furious. He told me that my sister had called my sister-in-law a nasty name, said she was ugly and fat, and then stormed out. I was stunned. That didn't sound like my sister at all. She can be blunt, but she doesn't throw those kinds of insults, and she's especially careful not to body shame anyone. I said as much to my husband and told him that if that's what mother-in-law said happened, then mother-in-law was lying. That did not go over well. He got angry immediately and accused me of always taking my sister's side over his family's. He said I wasn't even there and mother-in-law was, so why would I call her a liar? He reminded me that I barely get along with my sister most of the time, so why defend her now? At that point, I didn't even know the full story. Later, when I talked to my sister, she said she had been out in the yard helping put together a swing set when sister-in-law made a comment about her always getting involved in men's business and told her she should be in the kitchen with the other women. My sister told her to knock it off, grabbed her keys, and left. She didn't say anything about sister-in-law's looks or weight. She just shut the whole conversation down and walked away. So when I said mother-in-law was lying, I didn't even know about the "go to the kitchen" comment yet. I just knew what my gut told me. It didn't sound like my sister. And now I'm the bad guy in my own house because I didn't blindly agree with my mother-in-law? So, am I the jerk for calling my mother-in-law a liar? Your mother-in-law either lied or repeated gossip without knowing the truth, and your husband decided to believe her over you. That's a bigger problem than the argument at the party. If he thinks your sister deserved to be trashed based on secondhand info, that says a lot about where his loyalties are. Not the jerk. You didn't scream at anyone or cause a scene. You just said what you believe to be true. People lie or exaggerate in the heat of the moment, even mother-in-laws, especially mother-in-laws. Standing up for your sister, especially when she was being disrespected first, is reasonable. Your husband should be more upset at the person who provoked the whole situation, not the person who refused to lie about it. Background post 2. I am envious of my sister. This one is hard to write because it makes me feel like a terrible person. I, 30 female, have an older sister, Madison, who's 33. Growing up, she was my safe place. When our dad walked out when I was still a baby, it was Mom, Madison, me, and eventually our younger siblings. Mom was strict and unpredictable, and Madison was the only one who tried to shield me. She walked me to school, made up silly games to distract me when Mom was yelling, and would sneak me snacks when Mom wouldn't let me eat after a bad grade. But as we got older, we grew apart. By the time I was a teenager, we were barely more than polite to each other. She was still supportive in her way, but we weren't sharing secrets like we did as kids. We just lived our own separate lives. I got married at 18, and now I'm 30 with 2 kids. Madison took a different route. She had a son with a boyfriend who left as soon as he found out she was pregnant. She raised her son alone for years, working herself to the bone, until she met her now husband when her son was 6. They've been together for almost 2 years now, and I have to admit, her life looks good. Madison is an open feminist. She and her husband split everything down the middle. They both work, they both clean, they both cook. He takes her son to soccer practice, goes to games, helps with homework. He even wanted to adopt him legally. She said no, but still. When she's sick, he brings her soup and fusses over her. If they're tired, they order takeout, build a pillow fort with her son, and watch movies together. Meanwhile, my life looks like a treadmill that never stops. I love my kids, but I do everything. Cooking, cleaning, school drop-offs, doctor appointments, late-night fevers. My husband works, but he doesn't really help me with the kids, and I'm expected to make every meal, no matter how I feel. If I ask him to step up, he calls me spoiled and reminds me that women have been doing this for centuries. I catch myself resenting Madison, which makes me feel awful. She worked hard to get where she is. She deserves her happiness. But when I watch her husband dote on her, or when I see her with freshly done nails and hair while I'm still in my old leggings, it stings. My husband even comments on it, sometimes admiring, sometimes criticizing her for being too much. But it always lands like another dig at me. I know this is a husband problem. I know my resentment isn't fair. Madison hasn't done anything wrong. She's even been civil to my husband despite openly disapproving of him. But every time I see her living the life I wish I had, I want to cry. I hate that I feel this way. I hate that my first instinct is to be jealous instead of happy for her. She's been nothing but supportive over the years, and I feel like the worst sister in the world for resenting her instead of leaning on her. You're not a bad person for feeling this way. You're waking up to the fact that your marriage is one-sided. It's painful to realize someone else has what you wanted, but your feelings are just information. Use them. They're telling you that you need more support, more partnership, and maybe a serious conversation about what's working and what isn't. The resentment toward your sister is misplaced, but understandable. She's not the problem. Your husband is. You don't need to hate Madison for having a good marriage. You need to ask yourself if you want to stay in a bad one. Original post. Am I the jerk for telling my husband that I don't want to be a single mom of 3 kids? My husband, 42 male, and I, 31 female, have been married for almost 12 years. We have 2 kids, an 8-year-old boy and a 4-year-old girl. Our marriage hasn't been great for a long time. His mother and sister have always been in our business, criticizing my parenting, giving unsolicited advice, and finding ways to make me feel like I'm failing. To his credit, things have improved slightly over the last few months after several conversations where I told him that I couldn't keep living like this. He finally backed me up a little, and they've toned it down, though not completely. But recently, my husband has started floating the idea of a 3rd baby. At first, I thought he was joking. I love children. I always wanted a big family. But the thought of going through another pregnancy right now fills me with dread. I cook, clean, manage the house, take care of the kids, and work part-time from home. He doesn't help with the housework, which I've learned to live with, and he doesn't really help with the kids, which I'm not really okay with. I change every diaper. I did every night feeding. I handled every fever, every doctor appointment, every school meeting, every play date. When he comes home from work, he barely looks at the kids except to tell our daughter to quiet down if she's being too loud. He doesn't know their teachers' names or their friends' names. He doesn't know what they like for breakfast. So the idea of adding another baby, knowing I'd be doing it all again, basically alone, makes me want to cry. Last night, after yet another one of his, "I take great care of you and the kids, so we should have another," speeches, I snapped. I told him flat out that I don't agree, that 2 kids were enough, that I was not going to be a single mom of 3. I told him the kids barely know him because he doesn't spend time with them, that when he comes home from work, he checks out, doesn't ask about their day, and I eventually stopped telling him because he wasn't listening anyway. He just stood there looking like I'd slapped him. Then he called me a nasty name, told me I was delusional and ungrateful, and stormed out, straight to his mother's house. So, am I the jerk for saying I don't want to be a single mom of 3 kids when I already feel like I'm parenting the first 2 mostly on my own? Edit. I don't have parents to turn to, and I really don't want to dump all this on my friends. I did call my sister, Madison, and told her everything. A lot of the things you all said in the comments, she's been saying to me for years. She showed up not long after I called with food and wine, and her husband came too. My brother-in-law took my kids back to their house for a sleepover so I could have some breathing room, and Madison stayed with me. My husband is still at his parents' house. He hasn't called or texted. My mother-in-law did call me, but I didn't answer. I'm too angry and too sad to even think about having a conversation with her right now. Thank you to everyone who commented. It really means a lot to have this space to vent and get some clarity. I'll update again when I've had a chance to talk to my husband and figure out where to go from here. Not the jerk. You're not saying you don't want more kids because you hate them. You're saying you don't want to be even more overwhelmed and exhausted than you already are. Wanting to expand your family should be a joint decision. And if you'd be the one carrying the pregnancy and doing 90% of the childcare, your vote counts for a lot. You are already a single parent in every way except legally. You're the one keeping the household running, raising the kids, and carrying all the mental load. He gets to swoop in for the fun parts, if that, then disappear. Adding a baby wouldn't magically fix this dynamic, it would only make it worse. Your marriage needs serious work before another child should even be considered. Good on you for speaking up and not letting him pressure you into a situation that would break you. Not the jerk. Good for you for reaching out to Madison and letting her be there for you. It sounds like you really needed support and space to breathe. Right now, focus on calming your nervous system and getting rest. You do not need to rush into another heavy talk until you feel steady. This was a powerful step. You set a boundary, stuck to it, and got backup from someone who actually supports you. That's huge. Whether this marriage survives or not, You just showed your kids what it looks like to stand up for yourself when something is too much. Update. I wanted to update since a lot of you were worried about me. And honestly, a lot has happened since I last posted. For those who don't want the long version, things turned ugly. I'm safe. I've decided to get a divorce because my husband and I simply cannot agree on what a marriage should look like. Now for the longer update. The morning after my last post, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law showed up unannounced at my house. At that point, my husband, let's call him Ray, still hadn't called, texted, or come home. It was obvious that they expected me to be alone. The kids were still with my sister Madison and her husband, and Madison had stayed with me overnight. We all sat down in the living room and I tried to stay calm, but from the start, it felt like an ambush. I kept repeating that I didn't see the point of having a conversation with them without Ray there. I told them this was a matter between me and my husband and that we were both adults who should work this out ourselves. They didn't like that. My mother-in-law told me I wasn't the girl her son married anymore. I told her of course I wasn't. He married a 19-year-old. I'm older now. That apparently was the wrong answer because she started yelling at me about how I was destroying their family. Madison stepped in and told her that if she didn't calm down, she was calling the police. That was enough to get them to leave, but not before they threw a few more insults at me, calling me a bad mother, saying I was mistreating their son and that I'd regret this. Ray showed up a few hours later, not to check on me, not to ask how the kids were. He came home to yell at me about how I treated his mother. He seemed surprised to see Madison still there. I think her presence kept him from completely losing it because he was clearly angry but toned it down a little once he saw we weren't alone. He demanded Madison leave. She refused and said she'd give us privacy but wasn't leaving the house until I asked her to. I didn't ask her to, so she went upstairs while we talked. The conversation went in circles for nearly an hour. He accused me of being a bad wife, of not loving him because I didn't want more kids, of blaming him for everything. I asked him which kids he thought he was such a great father to, the ones he hadn't seen or even asked about in 3 days? That set him off. He completely lost it when I told him the kids were at Madison's house. He called her and her husband some mean names, the kind I won't even repeat here. The whole time I was trying to stay calm, but it was getting harder. He was grinding his teeth and taking deep breaths, like he was trying to hold himself back. I don't think I've ever been on edge in my own home before. Finally, I told him if he wasn't willing to actually work on our marriage and just wanted to pretend he was completely in the right, then we should get a divorce. He said fine. If that's what I wanted, I should pack my stuff and leave. So I started packing. That's when he really started ranting, saying things like, "You'll see how you do without me," and "You're going to have to explain to the kids why they have to move." I told him the kids weren't moving anywhere. They were staying in their home. If we divorced, whichever parent stayed in the house would be the one caring for them. It was like he couldn't process what I was saying. Then suddenly his tone changed. He said he was willing to hear me out and maybe work on things. At that point, I just snapped. I told him I didn't care anymore. We are getting a divorce, and the only thing left to figure out was logistics and custody. That's when he completely lost it. Madison came downstairs, the two of them went at it, and I called the police. We managed to get him out of the house and lock the door before the police arrived. He was gone by the time they got there, but we gave statements. I stayed in the house that night. I'm still shaken up, but I'm not backing down. I'm filing for divorce. Part of me feels foolish for ever thinking this could end differently, but another part of me is relieved. There's a strange peace in finally making the decision. And one last thing, to everyone who told me to lean on Madison more, thank you. She's been incredible. I'm ashamed of how I used to resent her, but now I see I was projecting my own unhappiness on her. She didn't deserve that. She's been the rock holding me together through all this. Thank you to everyone who's been commenting and encouraging me. The internet can be a rough place, but it can also be full of wonderful people, and I'm grateful for every single one of you. I'm so glad Madison was there when this all went down. She sounds like an amazing sister and honestly a guardian angel in this whole thing. You needed someone in your corner, and she was willing to put herself between y'all. You made the right call. This update hurt to read, but in a good way because you're finally seeing things clearly. You deserve peace. Your kids deserve a mom who feels safe in her own home. This is going to be hard, but it's the first real step toward a better life for all of you. Update 2. I am officially divorced. We signed the papers a few days ago, but today I got the final certificate, and it feels like a whole chapter just closed. So much has happened since that night. I can't even begin to explain everything, but here's what I can share. In the weeks after I posted, Ray decided he suddenly wanted to fight for our marriage. But what that looked like wasn't love. It was constant calls, texts from unknown numbers when I blocked him, random gifts I didn't ask for, and him showing up in places where he knew I'd be. Groceries, school drop-offs, even the library. It was like he was everywhere. But not because he cared, but more because he couldn't stand losing control. We live in a small town of around 15,000 people, so this became gossip pretty quickly. Everyone seemed to have an opinion about me. Some neighbors started dropping hints like, maybe you two can work it out. Others avoided me altogether, like I was contagious. My mother-in-law was the worst. She tried to rewrite the entire story, told everyone I had just woken up one day and decided to blow up my family. She even cornered me at a birthday party I was dropping my son off at, yelling about how I was breaking Ray's heart. Then she crossed the line and started saying nasty things about me to my kids. To Ray's credit, that was the one thing he shut down immediately. But by then, I'd already decided that mother-in-law's contact with the kids would be limited and on my terms. The final straw was when she took my kids shoe shopping without asking me. I know it sounds small, but it's one of those things that ties into my childhood. I have major anxiety about kids having the right shoes that fit properly, and she knew that. She did it deliberately to get under my skin. When I came back to pick them up and found out, I just lost it. Everyone was there. Mother-in-law, father-in-law, sister-in-law, brother-in-law, and Ray. And I let them all have it. I didn't even raise my voice at first, but then it all came out. I called mother-in-law names I didn't even knew I had in my vocabulary. Told Ray to his face that he was spineless. Told father-in-law he was basically a houseplant. Not sure how well that translated, but it made sense in the moment. And told sister-in-law that she was very bold when she gossiped, but turned into a doormat the second her mom told her what to do. No one said a word. They just stood there, staring like I'd grown another head. I barely remember driving home because I was shaking so hard. I ended up pulling over, called Madison, and told her I couldn't even make it the rest of the way. She came, picked me up, put the kids to bed, and stayed with me while I cried for 5 hours straight. After that, something shifted. The next time Ray tried to corner me in a store, I told him I'd call the police. When he didn't back off, I actually did. They gave him an official warning. If he contacted me outside of child-related communication, he'd spend the night in jail and face harassment charges. It was like a weight came off my shoulders. From there, things got better, slowly, bit by bit. I joined a volunteer group my sister started where we do small projects for the community, like repainting benches, clearing trash from parks, helping elderly neighbors with errands. I also started cleaning for an older woman in town who has cancer. She insisted on paying me, and combined with the rent money from the house Madison and I inherited, plus my part-time job, I now have a decent income. Eventually, Ray and I were able to sit down like adults and agree on the divorce. I waived alimony in exchange for keeping the house, and he pays child support. The kids stay here with me, which I know is best for them. I won't lie, it was hard at first seeing how easily they adjusted. They didn't cry for him or ask where he was. Their school therapist says they're fine and well-adjusted, but it hurt realizing that he had been so absent that his absence didn't even register. But now I'm starting to breathe again. I take walks, I meet up with people, I smile and it feels real. And I've learned that no matter how much my mother-in-law tried to drag my name through the mud, people who actually knew me saw through it. I don't know what's next, but I know I won't go back to the person who lived every day trying to appease someone else. Thank you to everyone who's encouraged me, yelled at me in the comments when I needed it, and reminded me that I wasn't crazy. I'm so glad you finally have that divorce certificate in your hand. This entire update was like watching someone finally exhale after holding their breath for years. You're doing amazing, and your kids are going to grow up knowing they have a strong mom who stood up for herself. The shoe story broke my heart because that was such a calculated move from mother-in-law. She wanted to hurt you, and you finally stood up for yourself. Good for you. You've been through a lot, and you still protected your kids, kept the house, and built a new life. That's something to be proud of. Side post. Am I overreacting to seeing my ex-mother-in-law in my dress? This is going to sound petty, but I swear it feels so creepy I can't stop thinking about it. Quick backstory. I've already told you a lot about my mother-in-law, how she criticized everything I did. First, I was too skinny, then I was too fat when I was pregnant. Every stage of my body was wrong in her eyes. She also tore into my clothes constantly, though to his credit, my ex occasionally shut her down on that one. 2 months ago, the divorce was finalized. I've been working on putting myself back together and moving forward. Then yesterday, I was out running errands when I saw her. And not just her. Her wearing one of my old dresses. Yes, literally one of my dresses. Back when I used to visit their house with Ray, I left some clothes in the closet in his old room. After everything blew up, I didn't bother going back for them. It didn't seem worth the headache. But seeing her in it hit me in a way I wasn't prepared for. This is the same woman who mocked me for years for wearing immature outfits, told me I wasn't classy, rolled her eyes at anything colorful. And now here she is, in her 60s, strutting around town in my dress, something she would have called childish or inappropriate if I had worn it a year ago. It's not about the fabric. I don't need the dress. I hadn't even thought about it in years. But the second I saw her in it, it felt like she was trying to crawl into my skin, trying to become me. Creepy doesn't even begin to describe it. I texted my ex immediately. What the actual heck? Did your mother lose her mind? No response yet. When I told Madison, she agreed it was creepy. My friend, on the other hand, said, "It's just a dress. Don't give her the satisfaction." Maybe she's right, but part of me feels like this wasn't random. Like mother-in-law knew it was mine and wore it hoping I'd see her. So now I'm stuck wondering if I'm blowing this out of proportion or if anyone else would be disturbed by this. Am I overreacting, or is it as weird as I felt in the moment? Not overreacting. She spent years criticizing your body and your wardrobe, and now she's wearing your clothes? That's not an accident. That's her trying to get under your skin. Take it as confirmation that you were right to cut ties. She's still obsessed with controlling the narrative. That would creep me out too. It's not about the dress itself, it's about what it represents. She spent years tearing you down for how you looked, then put on your dress like she's playing pretend. It's absolutely a power play. It's like she's trying to erase the line between you and her. Don't give her the satisfaction of reacting publicly, but do try to get your stuff back. Trust your gut. Weird is weird. Wearing her ex-daughter-in-law's dress? That's a whole new level of petty, like cosplay with emotional damage. Plot twist, next time she sees her, mother-in-law's got the same haircut as her. Stop it, you're giving her ideas. Fine, but if she starts carrying the same purse, we're calling Dr. Phil. What happens when a rude Karen tells OP they're not college material? Let's just say OP gets ultimate revenge. That's what happens in our next video. It just popped up on your screen. Give it a tap and come have a listen. Karen and I are already waiting for you.